Did you know that there is a deep connection between Kabbalistic worlds and space-time? In this explainer, we will touch on the meaning of Kabbalistic worlds and how to relate to them. Please note that all the ideas we will introduce are fully explained with source material in my latest book, Shomer Emunim, The Introduction to Kabbalah. Click on the link in the description below for details about my book. When we first hear about Kabbalistic worlds and the discussion of what are called physical and spiritual worlds, we might think that Kabbalah is otherworldly and mystical, spooky and irrational. The reality is that there is nothing whatsoever irrational or mystical about real Kabbalah. Real Torah-based Kabbalah, when properly understood, is entirely rational. Kabbalah texts describe the framework of existence to be of an infinite chain of interconnected worlds, connecting to the divine at its top and cascading all the way down to this physical world at its bottom. It is crucial to highlight that in Kabbalah, the words top and bottom in this context don't have any connection with a physical location. They are used to refer to higher or lower levels of perception. Perception is a relative concept, and the meaning of worlds in Kabbalah is absolutely and only related to relative perception. An entity with higher perception is said to be relatively higher up in the chain of worlds, and an entity with lower perception is said to be in a lower world. The top of the chain is therefore the highest possible level of perception, which is the divine, God. On the other hand, the bottom of this chain is us, in this physical world, where we have the lowest level of perception, which is strictly limited to the physical world around us. This framework of levels of perception, of levels of worlds, all exist within a single Kabbalistic environment referred to as makom, or place. In other words, all these worlds, these levels of perception, exist in the same place. They are intrinsically interconnected, and these worlds are just differentiated and separated by their different levels of perception. This might sound weird and ethereal, but we can relate to it simply from our understanding of basic science. Take any object, for example, a piece of paper, and ask, what is it? Is it just paper, or is it perhaps made up of paper molecules? We know that paper molecules are made up of atoms, but hold on. Atoms are made up of subatomic particles like protons and neutrons. We also know that subatomic particles are made up of quarks, and scientists currently hypothesize that quarks are made up of strings. So, what is the piece of paper? Is it paper, paper molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, quarks, or strings? The answer is simple. It is all of the above. And the piece of paper is simultaneously made of all these different entities. The way we see the piece of paper depends on our perception. If we just look at it, we see the piece of paper. If we look through an electron microscope, we will see shadows of atoms. And if we look at it with an atomic collider, we will understand that there are quarks. It all just depends on our perception. In Kabbalistic language, we can get away with saying that these different levels of strings, quarks, subatomic particles, atoms, molecules, and paper are different worlds of perception. They all simultaneously exist and make up the identical environment of the piece of paper, and they are all simultaneously true. However, in Kabbalistic language, these are all physical levels of existence and would be referred to as different physical worlds. In this example, the strings are the lowest world level that we relate to, and the paper is the highest world level. At every higher level, there are properties that simply don't exist in a lower level. For example, a piece of paper can be used for writing on, whereas it is inconceivable and meaningless to talk about writing on atoms. As humans, we are restricted to levels of physical perception. Our perception is limited to our constrained level in the world chain, and we perceive everything within and lower than that level. So we perceive the paper, and we can know about the lower levels of atoms and quarks. However, Kabbalah explains that we cannot perceive any world level above our level. That is, we cannot perceive all the cascading world levels in the interconnected chain above us, all the way up to and including God. These higher world levels are concealed from our perception, and the process of concealment is called tzimtzum. It is through this tzimtzum concealment that we perceive ourselves and our physical world to be what Kabbalists call Yesh, meaning something, whereas we don't perceive the higher worlds or God. And as a result, they are referred to as Ayin, meaning nothing, because from our perspective, they don't appear to be there. Nevertheless, we believe that Yesh is created from Ayin, that the physical reality that we do perceive is created from what we perceive to be nothing, the Ayin, from a higher level of existence. Science has recently understood that space, even when it is empty, is a seething mass of particles continuously and almost instantaneously popping into and out of existence, and theoretically explains the existence of matter in our world, the Yesh, as being generated in certain circumstances from space, seemingly from nothing, the Ayin. To sum up, the Kabbalistic notion of worlds is a very rational idea, that every world is a different level of perception, call it a different dimension of perception, of a single framework of existence, that is referred to as makom, place, which from our perspective we would call space, or perhaps more accurately, the fabric of space-time. These different worlds, different perceptions, are separated through a process called tzimtzum, through which every higher world, a relative Ayin, is concealed from every lower world, a relative Yesh. In the next explainer, we will introduce the fundamental Kabbalistic concept of Chasadim and Gevurot, of energy and constraint mechanisms. Before you go, don't forget, click on the link in the description below for details about Shomer Emunim, the Introduction to Kabbalah, which contains comprehensive explanations and sources for everything in this explainer series. So thank you for listening. I'm looking forward to seeing you in explainer number 4.